Before I get started, I just want to give a shameless plug to Michelle's storybook called The Night Song that is at the consignment booth. That is like a cuter version of Goodnight Moon kids book. I've got some business cards over there in case you want to mosey your way over there. But I guess I will start with a little bit about me. I am an Unreal authorized instructor, and so I work with Unreal Engine. And more importantly, I gave my life to Christ at the age of 13, just after a middle school beach retreat. And there were these individuals who, like, their walk with the Lord, it was real, and I wanted that. And the first mind's eye impression that the Lord gave me, it was this image of me just with my arms outstretched in this crossroads between two, like, in my old neighborhood. On the left was my old house, and it was falling apart, and on the right was this portal. And to me, it felt like the Lord was asking me to a life of adventure. Like, I can't tell you what all it's going to be, but it's going to be good, and you can choose. And I did. So middle school, I haven't looked back, and was baptized shortly thereafter. And flash forward to more recently, I started Ericana Productions, January of 2023, and I have a passion for filmmaking, storytelling, acting, editing, problem solving, just like anything that involves both sides of the brain. I feel like more complete. And definitely have a passion for inner healing, and the connection between how art and inner healing can be intertwined. You can actually use art for purposes of growth. And if someone is speaking from their authentic voice, it usually resonates. Like the stories in the films that we remember, they're authentic. It's not just like, Michael Bay explosions. It's got a story with characters that you actually care about. So I've come to find out you really can't speak from your authentic voice if you haven't dealt with the gunk on your windshield in this broken world. So big picture, I would love to start a school of the arts with inner healing at the core. So you've got these different tracks, and like to graduate, maybe if you're on the songwriting track, you've got inner healing, and then you could write a song where you're replacing alive the enemy with the Lord's truth, and that could be for animation or all these things. So if any of you have vision for that, let's talk. And what we're going to talk about today, it's virtual production. What is it? It's really, I won't be able to tell you everything that it is in just an hour, but my goal is to connect you with resources so that journey can begin, and we can dialogue through that a bit. And also, I want to share just how I got into it, because I'm sure there's going to be some takeaways for how you might be able to get started as well. And just a quick testimony. I want to brag on the Lord. He healed someone this week who's at this conference whose hip was bothering them, and like walking around, being on your feet all day this week, that would have been just like a no-go. But he healed that individual. So I hope that faith increases in the room, and that you're open to, more than just hearing some informative talks. So, but I think if we have time, I would love to have an opportunity if anyone needs a like prayer for anything like that. Would be happy to pray for you. All right. And just a reminder, James 5:14 through 15 says, "Is anyone among you sick? He should call for the elders of the church, and they are to pray over him with oil in the name of the Lord." So, all right. Well, before I get into the meat, I felt like the word that the Lord gave me for this talk was ownership. And so, Father, we invite you in. Pray that you would anoint the words of my mouth, that I would just be your vessel, that this environment, this space would be just sacred for you to speak to every individual exactly what they need to hear. We come before you and admit that we can't do this without you. And we're grateful that you are with us, and we welcome you here, and we just ask you to help us to tune into what you're saying right now. And so if you haven't gotten a handout sheet, we've got some up here in the front, and that gives you a link to this blog post, which has a list of, I think, go ahead. Yeah, just so you can refer to some of the references so you can continue learning on your own. Whether you are a beginner or you've actually been working with Unreal, there's something in here, like this resources page. There's something for anyone and everyone. There's different learning communities that you can go to in person or online, Discord channels, Facebook groups. Let me go to page 2. If you're more technical, there's online documentation. If you like to learn from textbooks, I got textbooks that I found very, very helpful in my journey, as well as networking events and just some tools that I use when I'm pitching or filmmaking. And also some tools to help you stay relevant, but also help you guard your eye gates. My job is not to tell you what you should or shouldn't watch, but using these guides can help you navigate that as well. So you're not having to choose between being relevant and safe. So that URL is at the top of the handout. And feel free to, if you want to peruse that, I'm sure maybe it might even inspire some questions or something as we get deeper into it. And I use LinkedIn heavily. So feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, like, hey, I saw you at the conference. I get a lot of LinkedIn invites, so if you actually take the time to write a little note, that will help me connect and make sure that I actually get you in my contacts so that you can be up to date. So, quick survey. How many of you have actually heard of Unreal Engine before this conference? Okay, great. That helps me. And how many have actually used Unreal Engine on a project, or you've been on a project that used it? Okay, nice. Good deal. And I wanted to open up and just ask you guys, what do you guys think virtual production is? A little bit of audience participation here. Yeah?
Using technology to go to locations where you couldn't go to, or that were more faster or more convenient.
Okay.
By using the screen.
So using technology to go to places that you couldn't go to, I'm repeating for the recording, and be able to do that faster, more conveniently. Great, yeah?
It seems like it expands what the art form had done initially.
Mm-hmm.
Like filmmaking on a set can now be broadened into other things. You can mix media or, like you were saying, go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
With ease.
So expanding what you already had been able to do.
Create massive sandworms.
Create massive sandworms like Dune. Yep. You can do so much with virtual production. For me, I would say it's becoming the new way of production. For me, I think the word virtual is going to go away, and it's just going to be production. It's just how we do it now. It used to be you had more of this linear approach where you would do the script writing and the treatment, and you had to have that pretty much locked before you could move forward with the concept art and pre-production. And then you would wait for that to be done. And then, okay, then you would actually start making things. And then you would have the film making bubble, and then you would go to post, and the distribution would happen at the end. It was just like da, 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 da. But, and this link that I have open is included in the resources page. So you can come back to this. There's a lot more in here than I'm going to be able to tell you about in the time that we have. So check it out. Whereas now you can have an idea, you can start visualizing it even earlier. And the term pitch-viz, I mean, I think the term pitch-viz, pre-viz, all the vizes is just getting lumped together into one term, visualization now. I still use the term pre-viz because that's what I'm used to, but I think that even that term itself is starting to get a little old, which makes me feel old. I don't think I like that. But tomorrow I'll be talking a lot more about pitch-viz in the How to Pitch Your Next Big Story with Unreal Engine, and you will get to see just my process for putting together 30 seconds of a script. It's four or five pages. I just did the first half of one page, and it took me pieces of 3-4 days, and my boyfriend and I just quickly did some VO, and so you'll get to see the fun that we had. And people are using game engines to create animations to be able to say, hey, this is what I want my story to be. And I mean, I'll talk about this more tomorrow, but a lot of different people can read the same script, but visualize it differently and have a different idea of what it is. But if you have this visual, people can be more unified. And then all these different departments can jump off of it. You can use it to gather your team, support raise. The pre-viz department can start. There's a virtual art department with virtual production, especially if you're doing LED wall production. You can have props that are in front of the wall, and you might want to make a digital double of it so that you can change the camera, and maybe it needs to be on the wall. And so having the ability to have a photoreal match of the real object on set. Virtual art departments, it seems like every major pre-viz company is trying to make their own objects for that very reason. And so I would say modeling is definitely a way you could get into the industry if you have that knack for thinking spatially. And there's several schools. I'd had a very traditional learning route of Georgia Tech, but then it became untraditional in that I cross-registered at Savannah College of Art and Design through the Arch cross-registration program. That's local to Georgia. I don't know about other states, but I do know Georgia. And I would even say that the school curriculum, if you're wanting to go that route, pay attention to if they include Unreal in their curriculum, because some schools are becoming really gung-ho and they're building that connection with Epic Games, and others are dragging their feet and they're still teaching Unity. Unfortunately, Georgia Tech is in that category right now. But if you know someone college age who's trying to think about schools in Georgia, I can probably tell you, okay, I would probably go to this one, maybe not that one, da-da-da-da-da. We can offload that conversation. But I do help with CG Spectrum. That's an online training school that's based in Australia. And it's more of a boot camp kind of program. Maybe it's 12 or 15 weeks. And you can specialize and go in a certain direction, and you have the benefit of mentorship and hands-on. And there's actually a lot of on-rail training partners. Let's see, internet, mercies, Lord, please. See if this will load within a reasonable amount of time. But they've got a map showing the different online and in-person resources, and they're opening up, people from Epic Games, they keep getting the questions, like, how do I find people who know Unreal? How do I find people? And they're trying to make that more accessible so that the places you would go to look and find those people is changing, and it's going to become even easier to find people, is what I'm trying to say. But I don't know where everyone came from, but like CG Spectrum is based in Australia, but post-COVID world, you can just do things online, and they hire people like me and other authorized instructors who can be on your local time zone, so you don't necessarily have to hop onto Australia time zone, things like that. But worth noting, so you can see what other places are out there for instruction. And I'm developing a little bit of content with SitHub, the Screen Industry Training Hub. They have connections with like directors guilds and things like that who are wanting curriculum geared specifically towards directors, but some of their content, it's open and free, and it's like a funnel. So there are some either prorated or free entry-level courses that you could hop into as well. And you don't have to be part of the Directors Guild to do that. So there's many more links on here that I could talk about. I don't want to get too far into that. So hence, recommend find this page. Okay, so let me go back to actually talking about virtual production. But the major thing with virtual production is, it used to be you would do this step and then this step and then this step, but now there can be rapid iterations. You can be changing all the way up into the filming, the principal photography day. Ideally, you have things locked 2 weeks before so you can optimize and make sure that things are the correct frame rate on the walls and things like that. But I think I want to pause. Are there any questions about terminology or just anything that I've said that, yes?
I'm sorry, kind of lost. What is Unreal?
Okay. Thank you for asking that question. So, Unreal Engine is a gaming software. Like it used to be, what was the game that, I think a Doom? Anyway, like some shoot 'em up, first-person shooter kind of games is what they originally did. But they released the software open source, so anyone can use it for free. It's not like Maya where you have to, or Adobe where you have to pay a monthly subscription. And instead of like with, let's say you're making a Pixar movie or something, and you're rendering a frame, and you click render, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait some more for all the lighting and things like that to get calculated. With a game engine software, you open the project, and if it's the first time you open it, it compiles all the shaders, and it figures out the material and the lighting information, and it takes longer to open the project that first time. But afterwards, when you hit play, you're able to explore and move around, and you're not having to wait and render for every single frame like you do in the older traditional animation pipeline. And that's why it's cool for an LED wall, because let's say you've got LED wall in the background, and then you've got a camera that is being tracked, and as the camera moves, you want the digital green screen to have the background moving correctly so that the parallax is correct. So, the depth looks right. And if things are able to update every single frame live on the wall, then that's what's really cool. You can move the camera and not have to like bake it in advance or anything like that. So iteration is a really powerful aspect of the merge of animation and games. So thank you for asking that. I do that. I just go phew. Any other questions?
So I guess, second question,
Mhm.
this is about, like, so virtual reality is about animation, is it? Filmmaking with animation.
It could be, yes. That is one of the many routes that you could take with Unreal Engine. You could take the game engine and you could make a game of Pilgrim's Progress if you wanted to. Someone actually is in the process of doing that. I saw on YouTube. Or you could take the game engine and you could make animated content and make a short story, the story of Jonah, if you wanted to. Or you could use this game engine and you could try to replicate a city that actually exists that is being bombed or something, and you obviously don't want to film in a crowded city, so you make a digital version of that environment and you shoot cameras with live people in front of it, and then you can control what time of day it is, and you can make sure you don't bomb anyone. That's good, because it's effects, or you can add that in later. But yeah, you can control the weather. You can be in a location that might be difficult to get to, let's say a remote location, and you don't want to schlep all of your really heavy camera gear, things like that. You could just go to a studio and do things like that. You could, like in Ready Player One, in order to figure out the story, Steven Spielberg was putting on a VR headset of a digital version of one of the environments, and it's like, okay, well, it might be great if the warehouse is actually twice as long, and then we could have the floor start to tilt up and have the things, coming down. And they used a Vive headset with, the goggles, and you've got the little controller, and he's like, okay, choosing if he wants to use a 50 milliliter lens, 35 milliliter, and just visually kind of being immersed in the 3D space in order to help him plan the live action photography shoot. Or it could be a mixture between live action and animation, depending on what kind of film. So there's a lot that you can do with the one software. It's just like,
You mentioned an LED wall.
yes.
So would that be a wall then that the actors would actually see the scenery that's
Mm-hmm.
used so they can relate to it?
So you're not having to act to a green blob.
Right.
You've actually got like,
Point
oh.
at something. Yeah.
And that is another aspect of it. It can help have more authentic acting, and yeah. Yeah, another aspect of it, you could use it to visualize complex stunt scenes, and you can have people in mocap suits and try to figure out how to make the camera look really cool for all the fast punches and stuff. So it seems like everything has a viz attached to it now. There's stunt viz, pre-viz, tech viz. Tech viz would be, let's say you've got a really complicated camera motion that needs to be repeated over and over again, or you need to figure out what the camera motion needs to be, or you need to find out if that crane or jumbo equipment can even fit in the studio that you're going to be at. Things like that. And so on a principal photography day, you could be shooting against just a green screen. You could be shooting just live action and not have any green screen or LED wall, or you could. Or I've been on a set where we were using Unreal to just make sure that the plates we were getting were like the right perspective, shot well enough so that post could use it. So we had live compositing. So on set, actors are doing what they're doing against green screen, but then on live, as they're filming, they're getting some visuals from Unreal Engine, like the background of the scene. And they're trying to make sure that how they're shooting it is actually going to work perspective-wise for the effects later versus like, oh no, we didn't shoot her, we got to do reshoots, and that's time and money, and they don't want to do that, so they'd rather invest in having that live compositing on the day. So that's yet another example of what you could do. And okay, we are about halfway through. So I'm going to pivot a little bit and figure out where I am in my notes. All right. So the only downside is there's this perception that you can keep iterating and iterating and iterating and not actually lock in, because it's like, oh, you can just change it so quickly in the game engine. So just be on the lookout for that if you're wanting to get into this industry. So, all right. But I just want to share a little bit how I got involved into this industry. I, was wanting to go the animation route, the voice acting route. I was on the track team and wanted to find a place where I could do something toward animation, but I could also do pole vaulting, because that's what I did in high school, and gymnastics and things like that. So I ended up Georgia Tech. They had computer science. I got a learning curve on the computer science end and ended up in a game lab. We used motion capture, but I was just like, I'm here in a game lab, but really I'm here for the animation because I've got access to a motion capture lab. So it was interesting that the industry started to do this. So that was the Lord. And I was still concerned that I didn't have enough of the artsy side. Like I could push buttons in the Maya software, that's a typical 3D animation software, but didn't feel like I could do much more than just push buttons. So I ended up cross-registering at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, and got to cherry pick some classes in the technical design and things like that. 2D animation I was happy to get a C, but 3D animation, it balanced out, and I was able to get a B. I was like, A, C, but I digress. And there was a SCAD professor who, I was trying to apply to be a lighter for Blue Sky, for that studio. And I looked at the recommendation letter, and honestly, it wasn't that great. The professor afterward was like, you might want to try to, leverage your technical skills. That was a hard day. It's like, but the reason I was there was to get more of the artsy skills. But what's interesting is what I thought was disqualifying me, I didn't have enough of the artsy, is actually what the Lord used to open opportunities for me. And Proverbs 4:5-6 says, trust in and rely confidently on the Lord with all of your heart, and do not rely on your insight or understanding. In all your ways, know and acknowledge and recognize him, and he will make your path straight and smooth, removing obstacles that block in your way. So the fact that I had the combination of technical, artsy, there was a mentorship program from Women in Communication and Television that got me in the door at Turner Studios, now Warner Brothers. And for those of you who are deeper in Unreal, this learning docs are great. But if you're just starting to get familiar with Unreal, you could start with what is virtual production. That one's not as technical as the virtual production field guide. That one, it's this long, but you could go swim in that for a while. But the Women in Cable Communications, that had a mentorship program that was really great. So there's some other ones in here. And the networking events and meetups, that one's like an entire spreadsheet that opens up of other opportunities to meet people and get connected. And so I ended up at Trick 3D, which is a small company, and startup, got to learn a lot of new technologies really quickly. So we were doing the VR, and we had the motion capture, and we were doing virtual photography. So Delta didn't want to take a plane out of commission, but we could green screen some chairs and have some talent sit in the green screen, and then we could use the motion capture to track the camera to make sure that the perspective was correct when it was rendered, so that they didn't have to redo the angle and the positioning of the camera on the photo shoot day. So that was probably a precursor to more things that were to come. So I want to take a moment to just ask you to reflect on what in your journey you might need to take ownership of, whether it's digging in to get more of the artsy skills like it was for me, or maybe it's being okay with the limitations or the opportunities that you might have to turn down along the way. There's sometimes that tension of, I don't have the artsy enough is telling you need to press forward, and other times it's a time to later own it and accept that maybe you are better at the pre-visualization side that I'm talking about myself. I'm not a final pixel person. I'm not the person who would build the photoreal version of the scene, but you might be. But how can you honor yourself on the journey that the Lord has you? Because for me, what I thought was disqualifying me is actually it ended up being an open door, and how you react to the closed doors in your lives will determine whether or not the Lord allows you to go into the next ones. And his ways are higher. He sees you, and he's trustworthy. And another term that did not make sense for me was I had to turn down a previs contract gig on a major film that was filming in Atlanta. And I had to take care of my mom. She was going through chemotherapy. And I would not trade that for the world, but it looked like career suicide. And it's actually what propelled me forward. And by being obedient in that, I got to just get closure with my mom. I was able to I'm getting emotional, but have memories that I would never take back. And I wasn't even sure her level of salvation, because she's like, you can know the Lord, but if you're not leaning and trusting and relying on him, if you don't actually know him, I can't judge. The Lord is the judge, but I wasn't sure where she was at. But by the Lord's grace, I know where she's at right now. So since I took a step back, I was able to have more time to get authorized as an Unreal instructor. That process it's pretty involved. You needed to have a combination of both teaching and industry experience. And the Lord would not let me jump right back into full-time positions, like going into a full-time previs job or salaried anything. It was very specifically like, okay, teach this one topic for a semester, pull back out, teach a different subject, come back home. Investing in voice acting, so there were skills that I use now all the time, and I didn't even know about the training program yet, but the Lord did, and he was positioning me so that I was primed and ready to be a candidate. And when I applied through the online screening process, less than 1% actually made it past that door of people who said, hey, I want to be a trainer, consider me. So that was the Lord. That process is actually getting revamped and it's becoming more accessible. We can sidebar that conversation too. I actually enjoy helping people, like if they want to become an authorized instructor too. That's opened a ton of opportunities for me. Would love to help other people figure that out too. So, sidetracked. Where did I go? All right, so yeah, it seemed like career suicide, but that's actually what allowed me to get the certification, because you had to pass an exam and then teach 2 classes and send that in. And I mean, it took months and months and months. And I could not have done that if I was working a full-time job. No way. So, and that opened up the ability to be a TA for the Unreal Fellowships. It was like these mentorship boot camp kinds of programs where it's intensive learning and you take classes really intensely for 5-6 weeks. By the end, you've made an animation kind of program. And I would have loved to have participated in it. You had to have had 5 years of industry experience to be a part of it. I didn't really have that. I hadn't worked on like a AAA game or things like that, but I had the certification, so I got to be a TA. So I didn't come in as a fellow, I came in as a teaching assistant, and then mentor, and then instructor. And that's been a phenomenal, like being able to see people's works in progress and comment on story and the network that has grown from there. So the Lord knew in advance. And I want to give us a lot of time for QA, or if anyone has any prayer requests, things like that. Let me scan through my other resources here. I'll probably look more at this filmmaking slide more tomorrow, because I'm talking about actually doing the pitch-viz, actually animating a scene. So it's going to be more, I'm doing more talking today. Tomorrow it'll be more like, here's a video of like a little snippet of me doing this, and here's a video of that. Okay. Okay, cool. So, other questions? Especially those, yes?
So I'm wondering, how can we as independent filmmakers take advantage of this technology when often it's quite expensive?
So the question is, how can we as independent filmmakers take advantage of virtual production? Because it can be quite expensive. So like doing the LED wall virtual production version, yes, like renting the studio and there's the wall and the panels, but you can start small. If you can get a computer that has a graphics card capable of the engine, and if you want to find that information, that would be with somewhere within the Unreal documentation, and I can, if you're having a hard time finding that, we can dial that in and figure that out. The easiest way to get a graphics card that's compatible these days is buying a new computer. That's the easiest way. Don't ask me why that's how it is. Is it the cheapest? No. But there we go. So you could start by making an animated short on your computer and using the sequencer tools, which is similar to like the editing interface of maybe Premiere, for instance. And start by getting used to the differences between the Maya, the old animation workflow, versus game. And, you don't have to be making LED wall content, but there is a bit of an adjustment between how you would go about things. Because with Maya, for instance, the process is very straightforward. It's like, okay, you do this, and you click this, and there's usually like 1 or 2 different ways to get something done. But in a game engine, it's like you can do it this many different ways. And some of the struggle, people are just wanting me to handhold them and just tell me which buttons to click. And I'm like, well, you could do it this way, or you could do it this way, or you could set it up so that the cameras live only in the sequence, or you could have them live in the world, and there's pros and cons to that. Or, yeah, there's it. I would say start with just doing an animated short in Unreal Engine, or even something smaller like getting an environment in from the marketplace, putting a camera in, and just get used to just like a couple shots. And that's how I would start. And then if you wanted to grow from there, it's like, okay, let's just get a regular TV and get a camera and figure out that next bit of let's have a live action person in front of something that you made in Unreal that you could then chroma key.
And then kind of on that point, Unreal currently, I guess until April, is still free. Any comments about the announcement today with the new pricing structure for Unreal?
Okay, so there's a question about Unreal has been free, and there's been a pricing restructure update. And to my knowledge, I think you can still use it for free up to a certain level, but I do think they are trying to get more of their revenue coming back, because, I mean, people working on Mandalorian are making this much money, and they would get a percentage if it was over a certain level. But Unreal, it's actually focusing more of their resources into their roots of game development, and they are offloading the training for the media entertainment back onto the Unreal authorized trainers and the training centers, which actually is probably better for us, because they are going to try and lower the bar for, like, instead of having you take an exam on all these different topics, you could start with, well, I have an aptitude for world building. Or if you don't yet, maybe you would go to CG Spectrum and start learning about modeling first. And then you could say, okay, yeah, I like modeling. Let me take the exam on that first. And then you can expand, and so you can start with a specialty and then expand out, and then go from there. So.
Any comments on what leverage Disney's going to have in the epic world after they $1 billion
Right.
purchase or investment?
Okay. So question about Disney, I think investing $1.5 million into something more than that. Okay, more than that. Into Epic Games. Any comments on the influence or effect of that? It definitely tells me the statement that they are just going toward Fortnite. And so some of you might be thinking to yourselves, well, maybe I need to get more into the gaming side, because Fortnite, like the Ready Player One reality, that is going to be Fortnite. It's here and it's coming. And it tells me that Epic Games is focusing on their gaming side, and they get more money from that, like all of the different skins that you can buy for the Fortnite characters and things like that. In terms of value system change because of Disney's involvement, I couldn't tell you one way or the other, but it does seem like that gaming is going to be their focus. Mm-hmm.
It was 1.5 billion.
Billion, not million. Okay, it was 1.5, but it was billion.
I want to ask, so with respect to film production as a whole, and maybe somebody who is totally new to animation and virtual production, but the person's area of interest and skill sets lie more with being a producer.
Mm-hmm.
How would you recommend that person perhaps to find a space in this industry?
Well, these different training centers, they have different focuses. And if I remember correctly, I think Final Pixel, okay, Internet mercies, Lord. I think they actually have some content that's more geared toward producing virtual production. And they have online courses. Also, where are you from? Like, in terms of where you live geographically?
I came in from Houston.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Because if you were in Georgia, I would tell you there's also some programs in like South Atlanta that's trying to do some education as well.
How long does it typically take the training?
For instance, courses. The short answer is it varies. Because you could do this precision run and gun, let me just take a 3-hour course, or 10-week boot camp, or 15-week boot camp. But let's see if we can get some visuals on here. But the main thing is understanding the different process shift, because you've already got the gift of that organization and knowing how much things cost. But if you don't understand the process, then you could still be working in the dark. And if there were any way to partner with people working on awesome things, to be able to pick their brain and sit in on what they're doing, all the better. Let me see if there's any other resources on here that are inspiring me.
While you look, I can speak into that a little bit.
Please.
If that's okay. As a producer, one of your jobs is team building, right? So finding people that have the ability to build these things. The beautiful part about virtual production is you don't need an LED wall to run it. You can actually run it off a projector screen. So you can get a big projector screen just like that, curved just like that, and you can mount the projector over your actor so that the shadows aren't showing on the screen. And you can still calibrate your valve puck, which is what you mount on top of your camera, to whatever it is. So you could find someone here, or someone in Atlanta, or someone in Timbuktu, if you so wanted to, that
Timbuktu.
can design your virtual screen, and then you just mount your projector properly, and you find a team in Houston that understands the camera work and how to calibrate the puck, and then you're off to the races in a cost-effective manner with whatever it is that you design in Virtual Engine or Unreal Engine once you have someone who is equipped to do that. That's the way that I would sort of work for that. Find someone that you want to design what you want to design, put them in contact with your director, and then find your camera person and figure out if they know how to use the pucket and stuff. And there's some contacts in Houston that I got that are very good and looking to expand in that realm.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
And there's some like glossary terms just to start getting used to the lingo, as well as the if you're up for the field production guide book, volumes 1 and 2, those are longer reads, but they're pretty good about starting high level and then getting deeper. So I wanted to share this Unreal 5 reveal video. When I saw this, I cried, because for different people it's going to be different things, but I will share why afterward. So just a little bit at the end. Yeah, this video broke the internet. So many people watched it within a short period of time. Okay, internet.
There's not much time left.
And this doesn't need to be constrained to small rooms. It can stretch all the way to the horizon.
The portal, it's open. Don't fail me now. what's next.
Well, what I've done with Epic Games, it's been just contracting for learning opportunities. But this video, the demo, it was running off of like a PlayStation, and it had all those multiples of polys, and it blew everyone's mind. But what I was connecting with is that first mind's eye vision that the Lord gave me, where I was standing in the middle of the road. On the left was my old house, and it was dilapidated, falling apart. And on the right was this portal, and the Lord was asking me, do you want to choose a life of adventure or stick with what you know that's falling apart and dead? And I saw this portal, and I felt so seen that the Lord knew my life, like that Jeremiah verse, formed me and knew me, and even before I was created. And, he knows my whole path. He knows your entire path. And, so the Lord's ways are higher. He sees you, and he's trustworthy. So we've got like another 9-10 minutes, but does anyone have any just ailments or anything that you would like praying for? Yes.
So is there anything that you would say an actor needs to know about this? What would be the most critical?
That's a good question. Because nowadays, you're able to see more on the screen. You're not having to imagine as much. It might be helpful if it's possible to get involved with the tech days, because the tech people are trying to figure out, all right, what kinds of lenses and what walking range keeps the artifacts away. Sometimes when you have the camera at a certain angle or too close to the LED wall, you can kind of get moire. So if you're aware of, like, okay, there might be certain zones where I need to stay within to avoid that issue. I mean, hopefully they would tell you that, but if you're thinking about that as well, that would be good. And let's see. That's what I'm thinking of immediately. I'll let you know if I think of anything else.
Somebody else had a question.
I was wondering, how big of a team, if I were going to hire someone who knew how to run this, how big of a team do you think there would need to be on a small budget film? Do you think I would need one person, 10 people to design all the assets and stuff, or do you think one person would be enough?
Depends on time and budget, because if you have all the time in the world, you could just have one really knowledgeable person. But in Unreal, there are so many different avenues. You could use it just for particles, or you could use it just for world building, or just for animation, or just sequencer. Or usually you find people who maybe they have a blend of a couple. There are generalists. If previs people tend to be more generalist, because you need to pull in pieces of a little bit of everything to just show the broad strokes. So probably I would go with generalist type people. But it also depends on, okay, how many scenes are going to require that digital, as well as, okay, are there effects? And in terms of knowing, like, okay, if it's this number of people, I would have to go and look into my network and start grabbing other people's knowledge and getting back to you on that. But yeah.
Does Unreal Engine have any 2D animation capabilities?
It does. Like, there's plugins that can hook in Photoshop, or try and you could even make a game that's a 2D side scroller and limit the camera to just one perspective. if you wanted to. So it can be as deep space or as flat space as you want it to be. Yeah.
Unreal also has something called a post-processing volume, and you can do a tremendous amount of different visual type rendering effects in that post-processing volume. So you can have something that you built to be 3D, but you can actually tweak it in the post-processing volume and have it render to look with a 2D feel.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very powerful.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So, as an actress or an actor, can somebody say, okay, I want me represented in, let's say, animation or, virtual production? Like he was asking, what's the role of actors? Now, if if virtual production becomes just normal, normalized, so can actors become those images that we see in, say, animation?
Well, there is a feature right now where you can use your phone, do a LiDAR or most likely like a photogrammetry scan of your face, take a bunch of pictures, different angles of your head, and then it gets turned into a 3D head model. And then you can take that and run it through MetaHuman Creator, which is like a human rig creator that Epic Games has. And then you can put your face onto a rigged skeleton. So my brain is also thinking about just trying to protect yourself copyright-wise in terms of like your image being used for how long, and so looking at contracts and things like that, because legislation hasn't caught up. We're still figuring that out. Like we've had multiple strikes to try and figure this out in terms of, wait, you did a LiDAR scan of my face and you're using my image for how long and you paid me how much? So that's still being figured out.
Last year we were about is this technology in conjunction with AI development. This is that entire baby.
Are there public domain images out there that anyone's free to use versus copyrighted images that could lead to lawsuits if you put them in your film, that kind of thing that you need to be careful about?
I usually try to look at the permissions. Let's say I'm wanting to use an image or something. There's somewhere you have to pay. There was a music situation where if you're using music for nonprofit purpose, like you could use the video, but if we were using it for an animation fellowship for Epic Games, which is not a nonprofit, we couldn't use this open source library that seemed like it could be free. We had to pay for a couple clips from this database. And so long story short is definitely look at the usage fine print for things like that. Right.
Unreal also has a very large marketplace of resources. Many of them are free.
Yes.
That you can use, and then lots of them are paid. So once you use them, you can use them.
Mm-hmm.
Another question. So you mentioned about pitch, the pitch feature. So say if a filmmaker comes to you and says, I got a 90-minute live action film, I want you to help me pitch it to some investors. What does that look like? Are you going to create a 90-minute rough animation? Or are you going to do like a 2 or 3 minute summary? Like try to capture like a
Right.
almost like a trailer type thing?
So the question is, okay, what if you are trying to pitch something? And it's 90 minutes, like do you do a 90-minute rough animation? I would say focus on the most pivotal scene that captures the tone of your film. And maybe it's only 1 or 2 pages of script. And then even if you've just got people and they're in a T-pose and they're sliding around, but the timing and the tone and the mood is portrayed, then you, at least for your initial pitches, that would probably be effective. If it's like $1 million pitch, I would probably tidy up the animation so you're not just like sliding around.
30 seconds of awesome is better than 90 minutes of suck.
And so you'll use animated images rather than have live actors to act it out. Just do the animation. Make it all 100% animation for the pitch.
Right.
And then would you ever hire voiceover actors to put the voices in? Or?
I'll just do it myself sometimes. But if you wanted it to have if you didn't feel like you had that skill set, then sure, bring your friends in or what have you. But I will show you more software images, videos tomorrow if you're curious about that. I'll kit bash or Frankenstein together and pull random mocap clips from the Mixamo library, which should be in the resource page. Let me double check. Yeah, the motion capture converter is for Mixamo animation, so I can add that one in later. Let me write that one down because that one's not in there yet. But it's a mocap library that Adobe bought, and it's not always exactly one-to-one what I had in mind, but I can use just a small portion or adjust the speed of it and just blend it together, and you get the idea, okay, they're walking, or okay, they're talking, or they're reacting.
Round of applause for Erica Penk. Thank you guys so much.